She took the job to bathe a bitter, broken millionaire, desperate to save her son. But when her touch begins to heal more than his scars, and threatening notes arrive warning her to run, she realizes she's not just fighting for a paycheck, she's walking straight into a secret that could cost everything. Before we dive into this unforgettable journey, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? If stories about love, sacrifice, and second chances speak to your heart, hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we're bringing you another powerful story you won't want to miss. The light flickered above the small kitchen table as Chloe tightened her arms around her son, Lucas, gently brushing a crumb from his cheek. The boy giggled, a sound too full of life for the hollow walls surrounding them. Chloe, only 25, wore exhaustion like a second skin, her eyes puffy from sleepless nights and her hands calloused from the jobs that never paid enough. Lucas, 6 and bright orange, looked up at her as he munched on a piece of toast. "Mommy, will we get a house with a yard someday?" Chloe smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "One day, baby, I promise." But promises didn't pay rent. Promises didn't buy school uniforms or keep the lights on. That morning, like so many before, Chloe had opened the fridge to find it nearly empty. The only thing that filled the room now was the cold, creeping despair she fought every single day. She turned to the table and saw a folded flyer her neighbor Anna had slipped under the door earlier. Chloe picked it up, not expecting much. But the headline grabbed her attention, instantly. Private caregiver needed, high-profile client, demanding work, high compensation, discretion required, immediate start. She read the words over and over, heart pounding, high compensation. Her eyes darted to Lucas, still humming to himself and scribbling in his drawing book. She knew what this could mean. Better food, better schools, maybe even nights without choosing between bills and groceries. But Chloe also understood what discretion and demanding might entail. What kind of job required such secrecy? Still, she had nothing left to lose. By evening, Chloe had dug out the cleanest blouse she owned, ironed it flat on their mattress, and sat at Anna's table filling out an application email on an old laptop. Her hands trembled as she hit send. 2 days later, a message arrived in her inbox with a short, formal reply. Interview scheduled, 9 a.m. sharp. Foster Estate. Do not be late. Chloe's breath caught in her throat. The name was familiar. Arthur Foster. Real estate magnate turned recluse after a high-profile accident. She remembered reading about him in magazines years ago. Now she was walking into his home. The morning of the interview was damp and gray. Lucas clung to her leg outside Anna's apartment, eyes wide and pleading. "Are you sure you have to go, Mommy?" "I do, baby," she whispered, kneeling down to hug him tightly. This could be it. The thing that changes everything. The cab ride to the estate took over an hour, and by the time they passed the edge of the city, Chloe's nerves were coiled like wire. When the iron gates of the Foster estate loomed into view, her breath hitched. They creaked open with mechanical precision, revealing a sweeping driveway flanked by manicured hedges and cold marble statues. The mansion ahead looked like something out of a dream or a nightmare. As the car rolled to a stop, Chloe stepped out and smoothed her skirt with clammy hands. The front doors opened, and a woman in her late 50s stepped out to greet her. "I'm Lucy," she said, her voice polite but clipped. "Housekeeper, come inside, we're on a schedule." Chloe nodded, following Lucy into the grand, echoing foyer. The polished floors reflected the chandelier's glow, and not a speck of dust existed anywhere. Everything about the place screamed power, wealth, control. Lucy led her down a long corridor toward a heavy oak door. "A word of advice," she murmured. "Mr. Foster is a private man. Direct. Don't try to charm him. Just be honest. Always." Chloe swallowed hard. "Yes, ma'am." Lucy knocked twice and opened the door. Chloe stepped into the office. It was lined with dark bookshelves and massive windows overlooking the back gardens. And in front of the vast mahogany desk sat a man in a charcoal suit, motionless in his wheelchair, Arthur Foster. He was younger than she'd expected, mid-30s perhaps, but his presence was formidable. His posture was rigid and his jaw tight. But it was his eyes that struck her most. Sharp, unreadable, cold. "You're the candidate?" he asked, without looking up from the papers on his desk. "Yes, sir." He glanced up then, his gaze settling on her like a scalpel. "Why do you want this job?" Chloe touched her hands behind her back. "I'm a single mother. I need stability. My son needs it. I'm willing to work hard and follow every rule." Arthur tilted his head slightly, assessing her with disinterest. "You have experience?" "I've taken care of people my whole life. Family, elders. I learn fast." A long silence stretched between them. Finally, Arthur gestured toward Lucy. "Explain the duties." Lucy stepped forward. "Your responsibilities will be personal and constant. Assisting with bathing, dressing, transporting Mr. Foster throughout the house. You'll follow a fixed schedule. No excuses, no delays. Meals will be served at set times. He prefers minimal interaction unless necessary. No small talk." Chloe nodded, her heart pounding. She wasn't sure what she had expected, but this was more intimate than she had imagined. Still, it didn't scare her. "What you saw out there," Arthur said, gesturing vaguely toward the hallway. "That world, it doesn't exist in here. You'll need to adapt quickly. I don't tolerate mistakes." "I understand," Chloe replied softly. Arthur studied her for another few seconds, then turned his chair slightly toward the window. "You'll start tomorrow. Be here by 6. Don't disappoint me." With that, the interview was over. Chloe stood frozen for a moment, unsure if she should say more. But Lucy gently touched her arm and guided her out of the room. As they walked down the hallway, Lucy gave her a quick glance. "Most people don't last long here," she said flatly. "But he let you in. That's already something." Outside, the gray skies had darkened. Chloe stepped back into the cab, her legs shaking, her mind racing. Everything inside her screamed this would be difficult, maybe impossible. But when she thought of Lucas, his voice, his drawings, his dreams, she knew one thing with certainty. She was not going to fail. Not this time. Not when everything was finally on the line. The morning air inside the Foster mansion was heavier than the gray sky outside. Chloe stepped through the front door just before 6, her shoes tapping quietly against the pristine marble floor. Every sound echoed, every breath felt too loud. She smoothed the fabric of her blouse, already second-guessing every choice she'd made that morning, from her shoes to her ponytail to the slight pink gloss she'd applied in the cab, hoping to look alert, not desperate. Lucy greeted her in the foyer with a nod and handed her a folded list. "This is Mr. Foster's schedule. Your mornings start here, in the East Wing. Breakfast is at 7, medication at 7:30, followed by hygiene. You'll assist him with his bathing routine after that. He'll expect efficiency." Chloe nodded, trying not to show how fast her heart was racing. "Understood." Lucy gave her a look. Mellow, unreadable. "You'll get used to the silence, most people don't. This house, it listens more than it speaks." Chloe followed her through the long hallways, the grandeur of the space doing little to calm her nerves. Gold-trimmed archways, dark oil paintings, and thick velvet drapes made everything feel like a museum. No warmth, just history and silence. When they reached the master suite, Lucy stopped and opened a side door. Inside, a bathroom larger than Chloe's entire apartment glistened under soft overhead lights. Assistive bars lined the walls, and the air carried the faint scent of cedar and something expensive. He forced things quick and quiet. "Adjust the bench so he can transfer. Lay out the towels exactly as marked in the cabinet. The bath soaps are arranged in the order he uses them. Don't mix them up." "Thank you," Chloe said quietly, trying to memorize everything at once. Lucy left, and within moments, Chloe heard the steady roll of wheels against the hallway floor. She turned to see Arthur entering, his expression unreadable, his hands firmly gripping the rims of his chair. "Let's begin. I don't have all morning," he said, his tone clipped. "Yes, sir," she replied, her voice low but steady. Chloe adjusted the benches, trying not to stare as he moved with practiced independence, shifting himself slowly and carefully. His muscles tensed with effort, his jaw tight as he slid onto the bench. She stood nearby, not hovering, just close enough if he needed her. "Don't treat me like I'm fragile," he muttered, his gaze fixed forward. "I'm just here to help," Chloe said calmly. "Only if you ask." He didn't respond. She moved through the motions carefully, making sure to keep her hands gentle and her focus on the task. When she ran the warm water over his shoulders, she noticed a long, jagged scar down his back. It was angry-looking, still faintly red in places. She paused for half a breath, but said nothing. The rest of the bath unfolded in silence. No small talk, no glances, just the sound of water, the quiet clink of bottles, and the deep pulsing tension between them. When it was done, Arthur shifted back into his chair without a word. Chloe helped him button his shirt and adjust his cuffs. She moved efficiently, without hesitation, and when she stepped back, Arthur finally looked at her. "You handled that better than most," he said, not as a compliment but as a fact. "I've been through worse," Chloe replied, simply. His eyes narrowed slightly, but he said nothing more. He wheeled himself out, and Chloe exhaled slowly, only then realizing she hadn't taken a full breath in minutes. The rest of the morning passed in a blur. Lucy gave her a brief tour of the rest of the estate, explaining which rooms Arthur preferred, where to avoid making noise, and how often the kitchen had to be restocked. Chloe did everything asked of her without complaint. But nothing prepared her for the moment she met Evelyn. It was nearly noon when Chloe entered the dining room with a tray of tea. She paused as a woman in a designer dress swept into the room like she owned the air itself. Slender, poised, and unmistakably beautiful, Evelyn looked like she had stepped out of a magazine cover. Her perfume reached Chloe before her words did. "You're the new one," Evelyn said with a smooth, chilly smile. "I heard someone new had taken the position." Again. Chloe forced a polite smile. "Yes, I'm Chloe." "I'm Evelyn," the woman said, her voice dripping with amusement. "Arthur and I have history." Evelyn turned to Arthur, who was seated at the head of the table, motionless. "I hope you're not giving her too much trouble. She seems delicate." Arthur didn't answer, but his jaw visibly clenched. Chloe kept her tone neutral. "I can handle myself, ma'am." "Oh, I'm sure you think so," Evelyn replied, her eyes cold. "But remember, this house has a way of chewing people up. You can be replaced. Don't forget your place." Chloe didn't answer. She didn't need to. The weight of Evelyn's presence made it clear. She was a threat, wrapped in silk and charm. Later that evening, back in the staff quarters, Chloe sat on the edge of her small bed and called Lucas. His voice lifted her the moment she heard it. "Mommy, did you meet the rich man yet? Is the house really huge?" Chloe laughed softly. "Yes, and yes. It's like a castle. But I miss you, sweetheart." "I miss you too. Anna made pancakes today. I saved you a bite, but I ate it already. Sorry." She wiped a tear from her cheek. "That's okay. I'll take extra hugs when I get home." Lucas lowered his voice. "Are you okay, Mommy?" Chloe closed her eyes. "I'm okay, baby. I'm doing this for us. You keep drawing and being my brave little boy, okay?" "Okay, I love you." "I love you more." After the call, Chloe sat in silence, staring at the ceiling. The weight of the day pressed on her, but she refused to crumble. Later, as she made her way to the kitchen, Lucy was there rinsing mugs. "You did well today," Lucy said without turning around. "Thank you," Chloe replied, surprised. "He didn't complain," Lucy added. "That's rare." Chloe hesitated, then asked, "What was he like before?" Lucy dried her hands. "He used to laugh. He used to trust. The accident didn't just take his legs, it took his faith in people." Chloe looked down. "I can see that." "Be patient," Lucy said gently. "He's not easy. But neither are you, I think. That might be a good thing." Chloe smiled faintly. "I'm not leaving, not yet." The next morning, Chloe rose before dawn. Her limbs ached from the unfamiliar routine, but she pushed through, dressing quietly and tying her hair back. At exactly 5:59, she entered the main hallway. Lucy was just stepping aside when Arthur's voice echoed from the end of the corridor. "Here early," he said, wheeling toward her. "Good." Chloe stood tall. "I thought you might need something." He stopped in front of her, his gaze steady. "We'll see how long you keep that attitude," he said. But there was something different in his tone, a shift, not quite warmth, but maybe interest. And that was enough. For now. The days passed slowly, but not without change. Chloe found herself learning the rhythms of the Foster mansion, the subtle creaks in the floor, the exact timing of Arthur's routines, the way Lucy moved with quiet command. She rose before dawn and often collapsed into bed long after the stars had claimed the sky, but there was a strange sense of purpose to it all. Even if Arthur rarely spoke more than a handful of words, she was beginning to understand him in ways that didn't require language. He no longer barked orders when she adjusted the bathwater. He didn't flinch when she touched his shoulder to steady him. Sometimes he even glanced at her, not with warmth, but not with cold disdain either. It was as if he were trying to figure her out, watching her with a guarded curiosity. One morning, as she helped him from the chair onto the bench, Arthur broke the silence. "Extile, are you really here?" Chloe looked up, surprised. "I told you already. I need this job. I need the money." Arthur's eyes narrowed. "That's not what I asked." She hesitated, then answered more honestly. "I'm here for my son. Lucas is 6. He's everything. I want him to have a life that doesn't feel like survival." Arthur scoffed. "People always say that, for my kids, for my family, but it's a cover. In the end, everyone's just trying to escape their own failure." Chloe paused as she reached for the soap, her fingers trembling slightly. "Maybe. But some of us fight harder when someone else is depending on us." Arthur didn't reply. He simply closed his eyes as the water ran down his back. That night, while cleaning the study, Chloe stumbled upon a box tucked behind a stack of untouched books. Inside were old photographs, some of Arthur at charity events, others in boardrooms, but one caught her attention. Arthur, standing and smiling, arm wrapped around a woman in a red dress. Evelyn. The two of them looked radiant. He had been walking then, whole, alive in a way she had never seen. "You always go through other people's things." Arthur's voice cut through the silence like a blade. Chloe turned, startled. He sat in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "I wasn't," she started, but stopped herself. "I saw the photo. That's all." Arthur wheeled himself into the room slowly. "Everyone wants to know. They look at me like a broken puzzle, wondering what pieces are missing. You're no different." Chloe gently closed the box. "You don't owe me your story, Mr. Foster." He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the floor. "That photo was taken before the accident, before everything fell apart." Chloe nodded, offering no more questions. The next day, Chloe was arranging fresh towels in the guest bathroom when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned to find Evelyn, dressed in a pale silk robe, arms crossed, and lips curled in a mocking smile. "I see you're making yourself at home," Evelyn said, her voice as smooth as poison. "I'm just doing my job," Chloe replied, trying to keep her tone even. Evelyn stepped closer, brushing her fingertips along the marble counter. "You know, Arthur has a habit of misplacing his loyalty. He's a man of moods. One day he appreciates you. The next, he doesn't even remember your name." "I'm not here for his moods," Chloe said, "just his care." Evelyn chuckled. "You say that now, but I've seen it happen. You'll overstep, thinking you're special. Then one day, you'll find your things in a box at the gate." Chloe didn't respond. She folded the last towel and walked past Evelyn without a word. That night, back in her room, Chloe found something strange slip beneath the door. A plain envelope. No name, no return address. Just 3 words scribbled on a scrap of paper inside. "Watch your step?" Her heart pounded as she read it again. The handwriting was jagged, rushed, and clearly intended to intimidate. She looked around the quiet room, suddenly aware of how alone she was. In the kitchen the next morning, Chloe handed the note to Lucy. The housekeeper read it silently, her expression turning grim. "Do you think it was her?" Chloe asked. Lucy folded the note in half. I wouldn't be surprised. Evelyn doesn't like anyone getting close to him, especially someone who doesn't play her games. What should I do? Nothing yet, Lucy said. Just be careful. Keep your head down. Chloe clenched her jaw. I don't scare easy, and I'm not walking away. Lucy studied her for a moment. You're stronger than you look, but be smart. Evelyn's the kind of person who strikes from the shadows. Later that day, Arthur requested an earlier than usual bath. Chloe complied, surprised by the change in schedule. When she entered the bathroom, he was already waiting. You're punctual, he said without looking at her. I try to be, she replied, checking the water temperature. She noticed something different about him. His shoulders weren't as tense, his gaze wasn't as sharp. As she rolled up his sleeve, she saw his hands tremble slightly, but not from pain, maybe from memory. Did you know I saw the photo? She asked cautiously. Arthur's expression remained neutral. Yes, and I didn't burn it, if that's what you're wondering. I wasn't. She was different back then, he muttered. Or maybe I just thought she was. He loved her. He let out a humorless laugh. I trusted her, which was worse. Chloe didn't press further. She reached for a towel, wrapping it around his shoulders as the water dripped down his chest. Do you believe people can change? She asked suddenly. Arthur tilted his head. Only when they lose everything. The rest of the bath passed in silence, but it wasn't the same silence as before. Something had shifted. An unspoken truth had been exchanged. That night, Chloe called Lucas again. Mommy, he shouted joyfully. I made a new drawing. It's me, you, and the man in the chair. We're in a garden, and there are flowers everywhere. Chloe laughed softly. I'd love to see that, sweetheart. Are you okay? You sound tired. I'm okay, she said, blinking back tears. Just a long day, but hearing you makes it all better. I love you, Mommy. I love you more. After the call, Chloe stared out the window into the dark, sprawling garden beyond the mansion. A storm was coming. She could feel it in the air, in her bones, but she wasn't leaving. Not when Arthur was beginning to speak. Not when Lucas was counting on her. Not when the truth still hid in every quiet corner of this house. The morning light filtered through the tall windows of the master bathroom, casting a soft glow over the white tiles. Chloe stood beside the shower bench, her movements practiced now, quiet and efficient. Arthur entered without a word, as he always did, wheeling himself in with mechanical precision. But this time, as she adjusted the water temperature, she noticed something different. His shoulders weren't blenched like they used to be. The tightness that had once defined him, that constant armor of resistance, had softened, if only slightly. She said nothing at first, simply handed him a towel and waited. He transferred from the chair to the bench, more fluidly now. When she offered support, he didn't flinch or snap. He didn't thank her either, but his silence no longer felt like dismissal. It felt shared. As she gently washed his back, careful around the angry scar that still ran down his spine, Chloe glanced toward the garden visible through the frosted window. The weather's nice today, she said softly. You ever think about spending a little time outside? The garden looks beautiful this time of year. Arthur's head turned just slightly, not enough to meet her eyes. No. Chloe nodded. Fresh air might feel good. I don't need fresh air, he said, sharper this time. I need people to stop pretending this is still my life. She didn't argue, just rinsed the soap from his shoulders and handed him the robe. The conversation ended there, like so many others, but not with anger, with something closer to fear. By mid-afternoon, Chloe had fallen into the rhythm of her tasks. The routine brought comfort, a way to drown out the swirling thoughts in her head. She was organizing linens in the hallway closet when she heard the creak of the front door and a familiar voice echoing faintly across the marble floor. Mommy? Chloe turned so fast she nearly dropped the towels. Lucas stood in the foyer, a backpack slung over one shoulder, a wide grin lighting up his face. Anna, the neighbor, stood behind him, looking apologetic. He insisted, said he had to see you. Chloe rushed forward, scooping Lucas into her arms. What are you doing here, baby? You can't just come by yourself. "I missed you," he said simply, clutching a rolled-up piece of paper in his hand. "I brought you something." Before she could respond, the sound of wheels caught her attention. Arthur appeared at the end of the hallway, watching them silently. Chloe stiffened, unsure of what to do. But Lucas, unfazed by the man in the chair, slid out of his mother's arms and walked straight toward him. "Are you the man in the chair?" Lucas asked, peering up at him curiously. Arthur's eyes flicked to Chloe, then back to the boy. "I am." Lucas held out the drawing. "I made this for my mom, but I think you might like it too." Arthur reached out, slowly taking the paper. It was a child's drawing, crude, colorful, full of flowers and stick figures. One was clearly Chloe, another Lucas, and another in a wheelchair beneath a blue sky. For a moment, Arthur just stared at it. Then, something remarkable happened. The corners of his mouth lifted, almost imperceptibly, into a smile. "You're quite the artist," he said. Lucas beamed. "Mom says I see the world like it should be." Arthur didn't reply, but his expression lingered on the drawing for several seconds more. Chloe stood silently nearby, watching the exchange with her heart in her throat. "You should have brought him sooner," Arthur murmured as Lucas darted back to her side. Chloe blinked. "I didn't think it was appropriate." Arthur turned his chair and began rolling away. "You were wrong." Later that day, Chloe returned to her cleaning duties, the drawing folded neatly in her apron pocket. She passed the main parlor just in time to see Evelyn descending the staircase, heels clicking sharply with every step. Her eyes landed on Chloe with immediate disdain. "Still here?" Evelyn asked, voice dripping with false surprise. "I would have thought by now you'd have found your way out." "I'm just doing my job," Chloe said quietly, hoping to move past her. But Evelyn's gaze dropped to the edge of the drawing peeking from Chloe's pocket. "What's that? Oh, let me guess. More childish treasures?" Chloe said nothing. Evelyn stepped closer, voice lowering. "Arthur has always had a weakness for pity. You parade that boy around, give him a crayon, and suddenly you think you matter here?" "I didn't parade anyone," Chloe said evenly. "My son came because he missed me." Evelyn's smile thinned. "You're temporary, remember that." Chloe didn't flinch. She walked past her without another word. But once inside the staff break room, the tears came. Quiet, restrained, but impossible to stop. She sat on the edge of the cot, shoulders shaking, her face buried in her hands. The pressure of the job, the threats, the isolation, it had all begun to crack the calm she wore like a second skin. She didn't hear him approach. When she looked up, Arthur was in the doorway. He didn't say a word, just wheeled himself in slowly, stopping beside her. For a long while, he said nothing, and neither did she. He didn't ask if she was okay. He didn't offer any words of comfort. He just sat there, in the quiet, his presence speaking more than any sentence could. Eventually, Chloe wiped her eyes. "You didn't have to come." Arthur looked at the wall. "I know." Another pause, and then, softly, he said, "Your son sees the world better than most adults I know." Chloe let out a faint laugh. "He still thinks everyone can be kind, that things can be fixed." Arthur didn't respond, but he didn't leave either. Later, as the sun dipped low behind the trees, casting long shadows across the garden paths, Chloe found herself wondering if it was possible, if something truly was beginning to change. Not just in Arthur, but in her. The next morning, Chloe walked past the kitchen with her tray of folded towels when she noticed the door to the therapy room was open. The room was rarely used, scared with neatly stacked weights, padded benches, and a set of parallel bars that looked untouched for months. She paused in the doorway, surprised to find Arthur already inside, positioned in his wheelchair near the bars. He was staring at them, not with disdain, but with the quiet, tight-lipped concentration of a man ready to confront something long buried. "Mr. Foster?" she asked gently. Without looking at her, he said, "I want to try something." Chloe stepped in. "What do you need me to do?" Arthur wheeled closer to the bars, adjusting his chair with precise movements. "Help me stabilize my back while I lift." She moved beside him, one hand hovering at his waist, the other steady at his shoulder. He braced himself against the bars, gripping them so hard his knuckles turned white. His breath grew sharp as he pushed upward, trying to lift his body from the chair. For a second, his torso rose, shaking, unsteady, but off the seat. Then he collapsed back, breathless and frustrated. "Barely moved," he muttered, eyes narrowing. Chloe crouched in front of him. "You moved. That's more than yesterday. That's a beginning." He looked at her, and something in his eyes flickered. Maybe disbelief, maybe the fragile echo of hope. Before he could respond, the sharp click of heels echoed behind them. "Well, isn't this a charming scene?" Evelyn said, stepping into the room with arms folded, her expression twisted into something smug. "You playing nurse, him playing hero." Arthur didn't turn. "What do you want, Evelyn?" "I came to bring some documents," she said sweetly, waving a cream-colored folder. "Just a few things to sign regarding your smaller properties, nothing important. I thought I'd deliver them personally, since your new assistant seemed so overwhelmed." Chloe stood, her jaw tightening. Arthur finally looked over his shoulder. "Leave them on the desk, and then leave." Evelyn blinked, caught off guard. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," he said more firmly now. "I'm done entertaining your interruptions." The room went silent for a moment, Evelyn's mask slipping. She turned her eyes to Chloe. "This is your fault. You've made him think he's strong again." "He's strong," Chloe replied quietly. Evelyn smiled bitterly. "We'll see how long that lasts." She tossed the folder onto the table and walked out, her heels clicking louder than before. Later that day, Chloe returned to her quarters and found another envelope beneath her door. This time, the message was bolder typed, not handwritten. "You're in over your head. Leave before you lose more than your job." Her stomach dropped. It wasn't just her anymore. Lucas had been here. He was connected to all of this now. The idea of someone threatening her son sent a chill so deep it almost stopped her breath. That evening, as she helped Arthur adjust the armrest on his chair, she asked, "Do you think people can change?" He looked at her, startled by the question. "Why?" "Because I want to believe it's possible," she said, "but I also know it takes more than wanting. It takes action, and some people, they just choose to stay the same." Arthur stared at the window for a long moment. "After the accident, I was in a coma for 3 weeks. When I woke up, my legs were gone. My company was in chaos. Evelyn was sitting at my bedside like nothing had changed. She kissed my cheek and told me everything would be fine." Chloe listened, unsure whether to speak. "But nothing was fine," he continued. "Turns out she'd already started moving things around behind my back. Staff changes, property delegations, her name on places it didn't belong. I trusted her, and she took everything she could, while I couldn't even get out of bed." Chloe's voice was steady. "Why didn't you remove her from your life?" "Because I thought I needed her," he said bitterly. "And part of me didn't want to face what she really was." Chloe reached for the folder Evelyn had left earlier and began skimming through the contents. Her brow furrowed as she flipped page after page. "This transfer request, it lists a new investment entity," she said slowly. "But it's not your holding company. The signature page has your name, but no seal. And the numbers in this margin, they don't match the valuation from the quarterly report." Arthur leaned forward. "What are you saying?" "She's trying to funnel funds somewhere else," Chloe said, "and if you'd signed this blindly, you'd be giving her permission." He took the document from her, scanning it with growing intensity. His jaw clenched. "She's been stealing," he whispered. "We need to get someone to look at this," Chloe said. "A real accountant, a lawyer who isn't tied to her." Arthur nodded, his expression hardening. "I know someone, but I'll need time." They sat in silence for a moment before Arthur turned to her again. "You've helped me see clearly," he said, his voice lower now, for the first time in a long time. Chloe didn't know what to say. Instead, she simply gave a nod, standing by as Arthur wheeled himself away, the folder clenched tightly in his hands. That night, she called Lucas again. He answered with his usual joy, chattering about a new cartoon he loved and a silly joke Anna had told him. Chloe laughed along, but her heart was heavy. After they hung up, she sat alone on her cot, staring at the ceiling. Everything was unraveling. But maybe, just maybe, something was starting to rebuild too. The call came early, just after breakfast. Arthur had been waiting. His private attorney, a man named Ellis, had spent the past 48 hours reviewing the documents Chloe flagged. Every line, every transfer, every discrepancy Evelyn thought she had buried beneath layers of manipulation. Arthur wheeled into the study while Chloe trailed behind, the file clutched in her hands. Ellis's voice rang clearly through the speakerphone. There's no doubt. The signatures were forged, sloppily too. She used a shell entity tied to an offshore account in Belize. If you'd signed Arthur, she would have gained control of nearly $2 million in liquid assets. Arthur's jaw tightened. Can we prove it? We already have. I've prepared a cease and desist, and if she pushes back, I'll have enough grounds to open a criminal case. Arthur looked up at Chloe, who stood silently in the corner. He didn't speak right away, but his eyes carried the message. It was time. That afternoon, Evelyn arrived at the estate unannounced. As always, her entrance was grand. Thea's clicking, lips painted, in crimson, chin lifted with practiced arrogance. But this time, she wasn't greeted with silence. Arthur was waiting in the sitting room, the folder of evidence on the coffee table. Chloe stood at his side, hands clasped tightly, watching the woman approach like a gathering storm. "What's this?" Evelyn asked, frowning at the papers. "Another paperwork issue. You should really let me handle these things, Arthur. You know how tedious legal matters are." Arthur nodded slowly. "Yes, tedious. Especially when I'm reviewing falsified documents signed in my name." Evelyn blinked. "Excuse me?" He opened the folder and tapped the top page. "This is a transfer request. It routes my assets into a company you failed to disclose. You forged my signature. Do you have any idea how serious this is?" For a moment, Evelyn's facade didn't crack, but her hands twitched at her sides. "This is ridiculous. I would never..." "I spoke to Ellis. He has everything. Dates, emails, wire logs. Stop lying." She turned, her voice sharpening. "This is her, isn't it?" She pointed at Chloe. "You let this charity case whisper poison in your ear?" Arthur didn't flinch. "She noticed what I should have seen months ago." Evelyn laughed, but it was brittle. "You really think she's on your side? She's just here for your pity. You're her paycheck." "I don't pity her," Arthur said firmly. "I respect her." The silence that followed was thick with tension. Evelyn's mask shattered. "You're a fool," she hissed. "She's using you, and when she's done, you'll be just as broken as the day they pulled you from that wreck." Chloe stepped forward, calm and steady. "I don't want your place. I just want to do my job. But I won't stand by and watch you manipulate him anymore." "You don't belong here," Evelyn spat. "You're just a temporary fantasy. You'll regret this." "I'm not afraid of you," Chloe said quietly. Evelyn's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing else. She spun on her heel and stormed out, her fury trailing behind her like smoke. Later that evening, Arthur sat in the therapy room, staring at the parallel bars. Chloe entered silently, carrying a towel and a bottle of water. "You really want to try again today?" she asked. Arthur looked at her, now more than ever. With her help, he positioned himself. The room was quiet, except for the sound of his breathing and the occasional creak of the metal bars beneath his hands. Sweat beaded at his brow as he pushed upward. His arms trembled, his core strained, but he didn't stop. Chloe watched with wide eyes as he rose, higher than ever before. His back was straight, his shoulders squared. For a moment, he held himself completely upright. "You're doing it," she whispered, voice thick with emotion. "You're standing." He stayed that way for several long seconds before easing back down into the chair, breathless but grinning. "I wouldn't have done this without you," he said, voice raw. Chloe wiped her eyes. "You did it because you wanted to. I just helped remind you that you could." That night, Chloe returned to her room and found another envelope beneath her door. Her heart sank as she bent to pick it up. This one was typed again, bolder, more ominous. "Leave before it's too late." She stared at it for a long moment, then folded it and slipped it into her pocket. Her hands trembled, not with fear, but with resolve. She had had enough. Later, as the mansion darkened and silence settled in, Chloe knocked softly on Arthur's study door. He looked up from a folder of legal documents. "I need to tell you something," she said. He set the papers aside. "What is it?" She stepped in and handed him the latest note. "It's not the first one. I've gotten 3 so far." Arthur unfolded the message, eyes scanning the threat. His mouth drew into a tight line. "Shh, you didn't tell me sooner?" "I didn't want to distract you," she said. "I thought if I ignored them, they'd stop. But it's not just me anymore. Lucas came here. I won't risk his safety." Arthur didn't speak for a long time. He folded the paper again, then set it on the desk with careful precision. "You're under my protection now," he said firmly. "Whatever Evelyn thinks she can do, she won't. I'll make sure of it." Chloe exhaled, her chest tightening with something between fear and relief. "You don't have to protect me," she said softly. "Yes, I do," he replied. "Because you've been protecting me from the moment you walked through that door." A beat passed between them. Quiet, unspoken, undeniable. And then, for the first time, Arthur added, "Thank you for not giving up on me." Chloe's voice cracked. "I couldn't. I saw something in you worth fighting for, and I still do." The night deepened around them, but for once, the house no longer felt cold. They weren't alone anymore. 3 days passed in relative calm, at least on the surface. Evelyn had gone quiet, but it wasn't the kind of silence that meant surrender. It was the quiet of calculation, of something boiling just beneath the surface. Chloe felt it like static in the air, and so did Lucy. One morning, as Chloe passed through the laundry hall carrying fresh sheets, Lucy caught her by the wrist and pulled her aside, her voice low. "She's not done," Lucy whispered. "I overheard a call last night. Evelyn was speaking to someone." "A lawyer?" Chloe's chest tightened. "What kind of lawyer?" She kept using the phrase, mental competence. "She's trying to argue that Arthur's not fit to manage his estate. If she proves it, the court might hand his assets over, including the house." Chloe didn't wait another second. She went straight to Arthur's study, knocking only once before entering. He looked up from a stack of papers, expression calm. "She's coming after you again," Chloe said. "She's trying to get the courts to question your mental capacity." Lucy overheard her. Arthur closed the folder with quiet precision. "Let her try." Chloe blinked. "You're not worried?" He leaned back in his chair. "No, because she's walking right into the trap I've set." He explained, calmly and clearly, that Ellis had already anticipated Evelyn's next move. They'd gathered documentation of Arthur's daily responsibilities, communications, financial decisions, all supported by medical reports showing no neurological impairment. And then there was Chloe, the caregiver Evelyn had underestimated from the beginning, now acting as witness to his progress, his clarity, his strength. "She wants to prove I'm helpless," Arthur said. "So, let's show her I'm not." At afternoon, Arthur wheeled himself into the therapy room, where Chloe and Lucy stood waiting. Instead of heading to the parallel bars, he nodded toward a sleek wooden cane leaning against the wall. "I want to try something new." Chloe's eyes widened. "Are you sure?" Arthur gave a short nod. "Spot." He took the cane in one hand and placed the other on the padded wall rail. Chloe stayed close, her hands hovering inches from his back. Slowly, painstakingly, Arthur pushed himself to standing. And then he took a step. Just one. But it was a step. Chloe let out a gasp, and Lucy clapped a hand over her mouth. Arthur's face lit up with a smile that seemed to erase years of bitterness. "Now," he said, catching his breath, "she'll see just how helpless I am." That evening, the silence broke. Evelyn stormed into the front foyer unannounced, fury flashing in every movement. Chloe was in the corridor nearby, folding linens, when she heard the door slam. "You?" Evelyn's voice sliced through the hall. Chloe turned just as Evelyn charged toward her, eyes wild. "You think you've won it? You think he's going to choose you over me?" "I never asked him to choose," Chloe replied, calm but firm. "You don't belong in this house? You never did." Evelyn hissed. "He's mine. His money, his legacy. All of it was supposed to be ours. You're just a detour." Chloe opened her mouth, but a voice behind them cut her off. Arthur said. He'd wheeled into the room without a sound. "You were the detour." Evelyn froze. Arthur moved closer. "For too long, I let you dictate the terms of my life because I was afraid. Afraid of being alone, afraid of being powerless. But I'm not afraid anymore." Her voice shook. "Arthur." He raised a hand. "You forged documents, you stole from me, and now you've tried to discredit my mind. That ends today. My lawyers will deliver formal notice first thing tomorrow. You're no longer welcome here, and you're permanently cut off." The air went dead. Evelyn looked between them, her lip trembling, eyes gleaming with fury, but she said nothing, just turned, stormed past the staff, and disappeared through the front doors. It was done. Chloe stood there, her breath caught somewhere between relief and disbelief. Arthur looked over at her. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded slowly, tears building. "You didn't have to protect me like that." "Yes, I did," he replied, "because no one protected me when I needed it most. I wasn't going to let history repeat itself." Later that night, Chloe found a sealed envelope tucked neatly under her door. Her name was written in Arthur's handwriting across the front. Heart racing, she stepped inside her quarters and sat on the edge of the bed before opening it. Inside was a letter and a contract. The letter read, "Chloe, this house is not what it used to be, but since you arrived, it has begun to feel like something more. You've done far more than care for me. You've helped me find myself again. For that, I'll never be able to repay you fully. But I'd like to try. I would be honored if you'd accept a permanent position here, not just as a caregiver, but as someone I trust. Along with it, a new salary, enough to ensure you and Lucas never have to worry again. An offer is not made from pity. It is made from gratitude and something else I don't yet have the words for. Whatever you decide, thank you for everything. Arthur." Chloe stared at the words, hands trembling. The contract beneath it listed a number that made her eyes widen. A salary 4 times what she was currently earning. Benefits, housing, education allowance for Lucas. Stability. The tears came freely then, but they weren't the tears of exhaustion or fear. They were tears of something finally breaking open inside her, a joy she hadn't felt in years. She took a breath, folded the contract neatly, and held it to her chest. The next morning, as Arthur sat in the sunroom reading the paper, she walked in and stood beside him. "I accept," she said. He looked up, a question in his eyes. "Offer," she continued, smiling through tears. "I accept." Arthur's face softened. "I'm glad." She sat down beside him, and for a long moment they just sat there, no words, no pressure. Just a shared silence. A beginning. 2 weeks later, a yellow cab rolled up to the tall iron gates of the Foster estate. The same gate Chloe once stood behind with trembling hands, wondering if she was walking into a world too big for someone like her. This time, she stepped out confidently, her hand gently holding Lucas's. The boy looked up at the towering mansion, wide-eyed. "Mom, we're really going to live here?" Chloe crouched beside him, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. "Yes, sweetheart. Mr. Foster invited us, and this time, it's not just for visit." As the front door opened, Arthur sat waiting at the top of the ramp, a faint smile playing at the corner of his mouth. He wasn't dressed in his usual dark suit. Today, he wore a soft blue sweater, sleeves rolled to the elbow. In his lap was a neatly wrapped box tied with a red ribbon. "For you," he said, handing it to Lucas. Lucas tore it open and gasped. Inside was a deluxe drawing kit, colored pencils, watercolors, paper pads, and sketchbooks. "I remembered what you said," Arthur said, "about how you see the world. I thought you might want to show us more of it." Lucas beamed and threw his arms around Arthur's neck, nearly knocking the box off his lap. "Thank you. You're the coolest grown-up ever." Arthur chuckled, momentarily stunned by the uninhibited affection. Chloe watched, eyes misting. She hadn't seen her son this happy in months, maybe years. Days passed, and something began to shift inside the mansion. The cold, polished silence that once haunted its halls gave way to sounds, dinner conversations, Lucas's laughter echoing through the corridors, and the soft shuffle of Arthur's cane as he made his way through morning therapy. Every morning, Arthur rose for training with a resolve no longer driven by bitterness but by purpose. Chloe attended each session, sometimes assisting, sometimes simply cheering from the sidelines. Lucy often joined too, pretending she was there to super schedules, though her teary smiles betrayed her growing affection for this new version of their world. One morning, as the sunlight streamed into the therapy room, Arthur gripped the cane, nodded once, and pushed upward, this time without support. Chloe stood a few feet away, watching with bated breath. He took one step, then another. No handrail, no aid, just him, standing tall and walking slowly toward her. When he reached her, he stopped, panting slightly. He whispered, the voice cracking. Arthur grinned. No, we did. Later that evening, Arthur arranged something small in the garden. A table beneath the string lights, freshly trimmed hedges, and soft classical music playing from the patio speakers. Chloe arrived in a soft summer dress. Lucas, in a button-up shirt and crooked tie he'd insisted on wearing like a gentleman. Lucy brought out the dinner and disappeared quickly, offering them privacy with a wink. Arthur raised a toast to new beginnings. They ate surrounded by soft, light laughter and blooming roses. When the dishes were cleared, Chloe walked barefoot in the grass with Lucas, while Arthur sat watching them with a peace he hadn't known in years. Then, as the sky dimmed into twilight, Arthur rolled up to Chloe, reached into his breast pocket and unfolded something small. A ring, simple, elegant, and glinting in the light. Chloe, he said, voice quiet but certain. You didn't just help me stand. You made me want to rise. Every single day you gave me something to fight for. A reason to believe there's still life ahead worth living. I want to build that life with you. Chloe froze, stunned. I know it's sudden, Arthur added, but I also know what I feel. I love you, and I want to give you and Lucas the life you both deserve. Tears welled up in Chloe's eyes. She covered her mouth with her hand, heart pounding. Nice, she whispered. Yes. Lucas rushed over, throwing his arms around both of them. Now we're a real family. Arthur laughed, and for the first time, Chloe saw it, a laugh unshadowed by pain. A new beginning. 3 months later, the estate transformed again, this time into something out of a dream. The garden was filled with ivory canopies, soft rose petals scattered along the trimmed paths, and golden lights woven through the hedges. Guests in formal wear filled the chairs lining the makeshift aisle, whispering with anticipation. But it wasn't the grandeur that made the day memorable. It was the meaning behind every detail. Chloe stood inside one of the guest rooms, hands trembling, as Lucy adjusted the final pin in her simple yet stunning white dress. The gown wasn't extravagant. It didn't need to be. Its clean lines and soft fabric felt like a promise of a life hard-earned and love deeply felt. Lucas bounded into the room, holding a small pillow with 2 rings tied securely in the center. "Ready, Mom?" he asked, eyes gleaming with excitement. She looked into the mirror and smiled. "I think I've been ready longer than I realized." Outside, the guests stood as Arthur emerged at the end of the aisle, not in a wheelchair, but walking slowly with his cane. Each step was careful, deliberate, and witnessed by all. The murmur among the crowd hushed into silence as he reached the altar, standing tall beneath the arch of roses. Then the music played. Chloe appeared at the top of the aisle, her arm gently linked with Lucas's. They walked together, the sons there. Blois took out his Sunday best. Sevens were many things between them, the beauty of her face unmatched. Noticing the subsumed responsibility, Ruth asked them, "Nora and I need some space." Blois said their names and left them. When she reached him, Arthur extended his hand. He wasn't shaking, his grip was strong. "Feel radiant," he whispered. "You're walking," she whispered back, eyes brimming. They turned to face the officiate, surrounded by flowers, lights, and people who had witnessed the transformation of a home, a man, and a woman whose paths had once seemed so far apart. As the vows were spoken, Chloe's voice wavered only once when she said, "You gave me a place not just to work, but to belong. And you made my son feel safe. I will never stop walking by your side." Arthur's answer was firm. "You gave me the courage to live again, and now I want every step forward to be with you." As the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Lucas rushed to their side without waiting for permission. "Group hug," he shouted. Laughter rang out among the guests as Chloe bent down, wrapping her arms around her son, while Arthur gently placed a hand on their backs. It was a picture of imperfect joy, beautiful and hard-won. At night, long after the guests had left and the music had died down, Arthur and Chloe stood in the garden again, alone under the stars. "At more nurses," he whispered. "No more threats," she added. He looked at her, running his hand down her cheek. Just us. They were happy with their current love. Chloe leaned toward him, her voice soft. "Just us. And a very talkative boy." They laughed softly, and in that moment the mansion was more than just a house of wealth and heritage. It was a house of love rebuilt step by step. Surely we all wished for such a beautiful love. A love that both of us experienced peacefully.